Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unpacking the Word. I'm Luna, and I'm joined by my co host, Barrett.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Barrett. This is the podcast where we dive deeper into what it means to live in an ethnocidal society and how we can combat that by creating sustainable culture. And so today we're going to be talking more about creating that sustainable culture, which I'm excited because it's part 2 from the last episode.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Let's get into it. Last time we talked about good friendships and what good friends mean, right? And it's friendships that sustain, grow, and nurture us. We talked a little bit about good work and good working environments. What does it mean to kind of like work in a sustainable, nurturing environment as well? And today, I just kind of wanted to talk about, or I wanted to start with actually, what good things have you been practicing this past week, Barrett?
Oh. Okay. So I it's funny because you always think about I should do this thing, I should do that thing, I should stretch more, meditate more, all these types of things, So
Relatable, yeah.
so like a decent amount of my mental is spent on thinking of like the good things that I think I should have done that I didn't do, but that doesn't mean like I've done wrong things. It's just like I think about those things a lot. But when it comes to good stuff, I say the thing that pops into my brain a lot. It's always just like stuff involving my kid. Like, I have a human being that I am now responsible for, hopefully making them into a good person. And like when you see them do things, so much of it is just they're just like copying what you do. Like that's it. And so you just spend time thinking about like all like the really small things that you do because they're gonna copy them. So like if my kid, he like really likes to like for me to hold him. Like if I pick him up from daycare, like he doesn't want to get in the stroller. He wants me to carry him all the way home. And if we're at the house, he wants me to carry him all the time. And so one thing I think about a lot is like when I'm carrying my kid, like what kind of energy am I like resonating? Like I want to make sure that like I'm not like stressed or anxious or any of that type of stuff. I make like a concerted effort to be like as calm as I can be. Like where my heart rate and my breathing is like really calm and like soothing so that like this sends good stuff to my kid where like when I hold him, he doesn't feel like a bunch of anxiety or worry or stress. Like I think about doing stuff like that. I'd say like another thing for my kid, and this is kind of I often think that this eventually could like get me in trouble. But my
Oh.
kid my kid really likes to like tinker with stuff. So
Mm.
like if he is left to his own devices, he'll go into our pantry and just start touching stuff like on the bottom floor and like moving stuff around. Like he's like cooking up stuff in the laboratory, just like moving things around. If I take him to the park, the thing he likes the most at the park is the latch on the gate that opens and locks the gate. Like he'll play with that more than the slide, And it's not that he like wants to escape. He sees that like this controls the door, so he wants to do it. And so when I see him tinkering with stuff and trying to figure things out, every now and then I'll give him like a hint on how to figure out the puzzle, you know? Just so that like he can keep on tinkering and it's like, all right, in the grand scheme of things, hopefully this creates a kid that likes to think and tinker and stuff like that. I hope it doesn't mean that he ends up getting into stuff he shouldn't get into, or opens up, you know. But
But
like
didn't
he's
you, Barrett, as a kid, weren't you getting into things that like maybe you shouldn't have? But it was because of your curiosity, right? To explore like what's beyond the door or like why does this open the way that it does?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Like I genuinely I don't remember what I was doing when I was 18 months or 2 years or whatever. But I've always been a person who asks a lot of questions. So I see my kid trying to figure stuff out, and there'll be moments where he's trying to figure something out and he won't, and he'll just like look frustrated and just like pick something up and throw it like and it's like, all right, well, let's Barrett, try this. Barrett, try that. And so, like, I think those are good things. Like, it's like making sure that the kid feels like calm and safe and happy while we're around each other. And, he's curious, and I'm teaching him to figure out stuff. I hope that when he gets a little bit taller, it can actually like open the gate. He doesn't do anything calamitous, but, you know, I'll I'll traverse that when I get there, but I think it probably
That
makes
was
more
my next
sense.
question. Yeah, that was my next question is if he's tall enough to open doors yet and like to do doorknobs and to like, run from room to room.
He doesn't have like the dexterity to like grab the knob and turn it and open it, but he can reach up and like touch it. He knows what to do. Like he sees me put like my keys in the front door and open it. And so like if I leave my keys on the table, he'll pick up my keys and walk to a doorknob and try to put them in. So
That is
tr-
very precious.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's just trying to figure out all the stuff. So no, he doesn't have the capacity to open the doors, but he knows that like this thing opens the door. I need to touch this thing and do something and it'll open. And I kind of like to help him figure out those things, but that
Yeah.
means that like there's going to be a point where like he has figured that thing out, and so now I then will have to teach him why being able to open the door doesn't mean that like opening it and doing whatever you want is the right thing to do, but
Yeah.
we'll get there.
That's I'm really glad you brought this up because, Mother's Day is this weekend and not everybody has a good relationship with their mom. I totally understand. Or they have moms who aren't the moms they were born with. But I am curious because, this conversation around like Mother's Day, Father's Day, or honestly, like any day recognizing parents and like family structure kind of leads to a conversation about like good parenting, right? And what does good, sustainable parenting look like and mean these days? Because, so often, like I'm at restaurants or I'm outside and I just see kids glued to the screen. Like they have an iPad and they're just touching it and they're playing games in the iPad. And I definitely have seen parents like, their kid starts to freak out and the parent just like puts the iPad in front of them and then they calm down and quiet down. And I know it's contentious. People are like, that's not good parenting. So I'm curious for you, Barrett. Yeah, what's good parenting? And like how do you build a good family structure?
So I guess like the problem resides with how our society understands good, where good is again like it is a thing that's over there. So
Hmm.
say Apple invents the iPad and these other places invent all these tablets. These companies will say that this thing is good because we believe that you can use it for X, Y, and Z. And so then people will get them and give them to their kids, trusting that the goodness resides in that tool, where they don't have an obligation to have a philosophy that guides how they interact with the tool. They've just been told that the tool itself is good. And so interacting with it however you want will be an expression of something good. And then years go by and all these unforeseen problems occur because they didn't have a philosophy for how to interact with the tool. They thought the tool was an embodiment of goodness. And so that's why tablets become such a problem, because they will say, okay, this thing is good, give it to your kid. And so then they give it to their kid, and then their kids do all sorts of stuff on it that's bad. And then the next thing that they say to do is, all right, now you can have parental controls that will limit your kids' access to bad things. But there still isn't something that articulating how do you interact with this in a good way.
Right.
So I think the West, again, the concept of good is is an external thing that you can pursue, and then once you get it, goodness just emanates from it, and that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. And so the same problem regarding good parenting happens all the time, because we found some, every other year we've allegedly found some magical thing that will be the thing where the goodness comes from, and the parent has like a passive relationship with that good entity because that is responsible for goodness and not the parent. And so I think this is where the parenting issue comes into play. And I'll say, I remember when I was a kid, my mom loved watching the Today Show, and she still loves watching the Today Show. And so when we would get ready for school or whatever, I'd watch some of the Today Show. It was always on in the morning. And at some point after watching for many, many years, it hit me that every 6 months, year or so, someone shows up with some newfangled idea about how to raise kids.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
at one point I remember saying to my mom, and I talked to her about this. She doesn't even remember me like bringing this up. But I said, if they're coming up with a new idea about parenting every couple years, every year, maybe multiple times a year, they clearly don't know what they're talking about. How long have they tested this theory? Because if you're a good parent, you will find out that you're good because that person's still doing good stuff probably by the time you're dead. So, and then they will continue doing stuff long after you've passed away. So we need a window of 50 years, 60 years to really confirm whether it's good or not. So these philosophies, these ideas that people come out with every couple years,
Mm-hmm.
how long have they been testing it? How can they tell people that there's a guarantee that it works? If the guarantee is you do this and your kid goes to a college that's good, that clearly can't be the barometer for whether that person's going to have a good life or be a good person. That's just so short-sighted. And so I think from a really early age, I kind of believed that America just didn't have a clue. And they would tell me they didn't have a clue because they'd come up with new ideas about how to do what should be one of the most basic things ever, like every other year. So for me, good parenting has to start with having a philosophy of cultivating good yourself, and then that will guide how you interact with all the other things. So for example, I don't want my kid to have a bunch of unnecessary anxiety or worry. So I think it's good to try to be as calm as I can when I'm around him or when I'm holding him. I think it's good for him to laugh about stuff. So you can be silly. Being a parent's really great because you're allowed to be really silly. You can just be silly all day long. Everyone thinks it's perfectly acceptable to be silly every second when you're around a kid. So that's just floodgates open up. Just be a silly person. When the example for the park, when you send your kid to a park, most people really seem to want their kid to do the park stuff. So you send them to a park, that kid's supposed to get on the slide. They're supposed to get on the swing. They're supposed to do this. They're supposed to do that. They're supposed to like it. My kid shows up and he doesn't want to get on the swings or whatever. He just wants to play with the latch on the gate. That's awesome. Great. I don't have a projection of what good is supposed to be like. The kid's 19 months. Yeah, hang up, have fun with a latch all day. Who cares? Tomorrow, which he doesn't have a real comprehension of time, it's a whole new world. Tomorrow, he really might love the slide. Go slide. doesn't. So I really think the United, and I will also add, once you become a parent and you see all of the parent mommy blogs and all this stuff telling you how to be a parent, it just becomes really obvious that no one has a clue about what they're doing and they're just making stuff up. And a lot of it's about feeling good, or a lot of it's also about unlearning stuff that your parents thought was a good idea and you found out that it was a bad idea. And luckily for me, like, I'm not a white person, so a lot of the stuff that they talk about are things that either just didn't happen to me or I had a natural skepticism towards it, because as a black person in the South, you probably should have a healthy skepticism regarding ideas that white people are going to tell you make a lot of sense, just make sense. So I don't have to spend as much time trying to unlearn bad things, which makes it way easier too. So that's kind of a
No,
long
yeah.
answer. Did that
No, no, no,
answer the
I
question?
appreciate that. Yeah, I think you definitely did. And I mean, like, kind of as a side rant to the mommy blogs and like mommy influencers on social media, I think that there's been a greater rise in skepticism of people who are posting a lot of content about their kids, these kids getting older, and then realizing, like embarrassing photos and videos of them just doing regular baby and kid stuff are all over the internet. And it has kind of profited for their parents, in that their parents were maybe in for at first started with like good intentions of like, oh, here's my kid doing silly stuff and here's kind of what I'm doing to raise them, to like either course correct when they make an accident or a mistake. But then like started to like it just snowballed into this whole thing of like these parents are, like filming their kids having like anxiety attacks or like nervous breakdowns and like aren't coping very well from having a camera in their face all the time. Yeah.
A lot of that resides from there not being a clear philosophy about what good is. And if you don't have that
Yeah.
philosophy, then what we end up replacing it with is having a feeling that you believe it's good, which that's a bunch of nothing. It's, you and I, we both teach. Lots of kids have good feelings about stuff they put on an exam, and it's wrong. That good feeling doesn't matter. It's a
Yeah.
nothing. And so, in the absence of a good philosophy, we start acting like a bunch of nothingness is something really, really important. And so, social media is, you can use, if you have a philosophy with it, it can be perfectly fine. But at the end of the day, it becomes a commodity that you, if you spend a lot of time with it, you can profit from it. You can, and that profit could be financially, directly from ads or whatever you get, but it can also be if you have a big enough audience. And so the way that you're interacting with it isn't some sort of innocuous thing. It's not a passive thing. There's a clear agenda as to why you would want to post on it every single day, because there's the potential for growth, and that potential for growth financially is always there. So even if you're not saying I'm explicitly doing this because I want to make a lot of money, if you're
Off my
doing it a
kid.
lot, right? But
Yeah.
if you're doing it a lot, you are well aware that it could result in that.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you have a philosophy that you're doing it because it's good intentions without a clarity about what good is, where the idea that you're feeling trumps the clear reason why you're engaging with it in any way. And that's not that the engagement is necessarily bad, but if you just pretend that you're doing something for a different reason than why you're clearly doing it, then that's going to create a problem. And so
Yeah.
that's why a lot of these mommy bloggers, you end up finding out that the image that they project isn't authentic. And
Right.
it's not authentic because they know if they put the authentic image out there, their audience might not grow.
Yeah.
So have a clarity about why you're doing it. And then
Have a philosophy. Yeah, on
exactly.
like parenting,
And
right? And
and and having the absence of a philosophy and trying to say that your emotions, regardless of the outcome, is an adequate substitute, that doesn't make any sense. How could that's not adequate in really any aspect of life? If it is, it shouldn't be. And so, yeah, you go. That's why so many people go to these mommy bloggers and they look at it, and a lot of people just feel bad. They feel they end up feeling as if they're inadequate parents because they're not as perfect as this person or that person, or and it's we have no idea how what these people's kids are going to turn out like. And that's not saying that I expect their kids to turn out and be something bad, but the case study isn't long enough to show that there's any validity to anything that they're saying. So
super true. Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
it. So yeah,
Circumstances are totally different too, like socioeconomic status, what, how, if you have time to take, parental leave, extended parental leave for your kids and things like that too. So, I mean, it's always hard. Yeah.
and that also goes to the same problem of the goodness resides in the other stuff. So you are capable of being a good parent and mimicking this other person online who you believe is a good parent if you have all of the stuff that they have as a good parent. So if I had this thing or I had that thing or I had this thing, then I'd be capable of being a good parent. And clearly, having more tools can make you better at what you're trying to do, but you have to have a clarity about what you're trying to do first so that those tools you can use them in accordance to your philosophy. But what we're really talking about is the absence of a philosophy where the source of goodness comes from the mommy blogger or comes from the
Mm-hmm.
tool that the mommy bloggers have. And that's just not how it works. You have to have a philosophy
Yeah.
that precedes that so you can know how to use the tool properly.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because I feel like oftentimes good parents feel I'm not a parent myself, but I feel like when I talk with friends who are parents, like they're often talking about what tools, what resources they wish they had. But I mean, I just see them still being a good parent because they care a lot about their kids and care about creating a nurturing environment for their kids now, regardless of what they do or don't have. Like that's I feel like most important for a lot of good parents. Like, am I creating a nurturing environment? Am I creating an environment where, my kid feels safe? Yeah.
Like the key thing is these kids, when they're young, they can't really talk. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to learn things because you're explaining it to them or you're giving them a book to read. They're going to learn stuff because they're going to observe consistent behavior.
Exactly.
And so if you're going to
Mm-hmm.
do something consistently, you have to have a philosophy because that'll make it easier to consistently do it.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's the key thing. You have to have a clarity about what good is so that you can consistently do it. So for us, and we articulated this in the last episode, but good is, something that's sustainable and nurturing. As a parent, that's really what you are trying to be. Like the goal is to nurture your child so they can grow into the best iteration of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you want that has to be sustainable because growth isn't going to happen overnight. And you want them to be able to be the best version of themselves as long as they can be. So that iteration of themselves that you're hoping to cultivate and nurture, that needs to be sustainable. And for you to be able to do it, you also need to be sustainable. That equates to being good, like a good friend, just like a good parent. And so if you have that philosophy, then that philosophy will guide how you interact with social media or television or this thing or that thing. And yeah, quite often it'll fly in the face of these arbitrary American ideas. For
And
example,
rules, I feel like, yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for example, about a week or so ago, Andrea, my partner, she went out of town, and it was just me and the baby for a whole week. And a couple of days before she went out of town, my kid ate a slice of cheese, and he became addicted to cheese. And in a couple of days, he learned how to say the word cheese. Like, he liked cheese so much, he started saying cheese. He wanted cheese.
Wow. Wow.
100%. Yeah. And cheese is not in the pantry. Cheese is in the refrigerator. So
Yeah.
he used to go to the pantry and tinker because his pouches and milk boxes and stuff were in the pantry. That's where his stuff is at. So it's like, I'm going to go and get my food. And while I'm getting my food, I'll toy around with all this stuff. There's neat trinkets here. You know, there's a pan here and this, that, and the other. Once the kid liked cheese, the pantry became secondary. He'd come home from daycare. I'd take him out of the stroller. He would walk all the way to the kitchen and put his hand on the refrigerator door and try to open it.
Oh my gosh.
And then I'd open the refrigerator, and he'd look in the refrigerator and grab the cheese and say, cheese, and give it to me. Cheese has a decent amount of salt in it. Like, kids aren't supposed to eat a bunch of cheese. But that's all he wanted to eat. And then I found out that if a kid
My
eats a bunch of
goodness.
cheese, they get tired and they go to sleep. And so so he'd come home, he'd get a bunch of cheese, he'd walk back to the living room, and we'd watch kid shows, and he would just eat slices of cheese. He'd eat 3-4 slices of cheese. Just no joke. And the concern was, well, I hope he doesn't get constipated. Like, yeah, I hope so too. And he didn't. All right, cool.
That's great.
And next thing you know, his whole love for dairy just went to another level. And so now he'll come home, open up the refrigerator, just go straight to the refrigerator, looks for cheese, he'll hand me the cheese. Next thing you know, he'll find the milk and grab the carton of milk and give it to me. And then he'll grab a container of yogurt and give it to me. And I will scoop out
Wow.
yogurt, put it in his bowl, pour milk in his glass, and have a packet of cheese, and we'll walk to the living room, and he will pick up a glass of milk and just start drinking the milk. And then when he's done, he'll go, more, make the more sign. He won't say it. This is sign language for more. He'll ask for more milk. He'll stand there, feed himself yogurt, and then eat as much cheese as he can. And we
My
just go,
goodness.
this kid loves dairy. I don't know if this
Yeah.
is okay. I don't know if it's okay for a kid to like dairy this much. And I don't know if it's okay for a 19-month-old to basically pick his dinner every day. Because because if we try to give him
Oh my
something else, he won't want it. He won't want it. It's like, no, cheese. And
Oh
he
my
doesn't
God.
know milk. He doesn't know how to say milk. All liquids are water. So he'll say wah, and that will mean he may want water or he may want milk.
Oh wow.
And so we'll put him
Oh
in
my
the glass.
God.
Oh, and another thing is he's a kid, so he doesn't know how to say not yet. So if he doesn't like something, so say for example, I put the glass of milk in front of him. Sometimes he'll push it away. That doesn't mean he doesn't want milk. That means he may want to eat cheese or yogurt first and then drink the milk.
Wow.
Yeah. And so
So he's got an order to things.
yeah, he'll be he's hungry, he ate some cheese, and he'll say, "Oh, I want some yogurt." He won't say it, but he'll want yogurt. But like, say the yogurt and milk are right next to each other. He'll point at the thing that he wants, and from my vantage point, it's not clear whether it's the milk or the yogurt. So say I
Uh-huh.
grab the
Uh-huh.
wrong thing, he'll push it away, and I go, oh, "Okay," and then I'll give him some yogurt, and he'll have a couple spoonfuls of yogurt, and then he'll
Oh my
point in the same place and grab the milk and grab it and then drink it. And also, at daycare, they stopped using sippy cups, and you can just drink it
Uh-huh.
like a regular glass. And once he realized that you didn't need to have a straw, I'm done with that. I don't want it. He's like, I don't want straws anymore. I want to drink everything from the
Wow.
glass. Just
Wow.
straws are, every now and then he'll drink like a milk box kind of thing
Yeah.
from a
Yeah,
straw.
yeah, yeah.
But for the most part, he wants it in the glass. He wants to drink it like an adult.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so like I don't know if any of that is what they would say is good parenting. But I do know that my kid has figured out where the food he likes is. And he's
Oh
telling me
yeah,
every day what he wants
absolutely.
to eat. And I give it to him. And since we haven't been feeding him junk food, he's not asking for stuff that's bad. So,
Yeah.
like, we have
Yeah.
a philosophy about giving him sustainable, nurturing food, which is
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
avoiding sweets. It's not overly rigid. So the stuff that he's exposed to that he thinks about eating, it's pretty good stuff. He's just just
It
eating a lot of
is.
dairy.
Yeah.
And so if he
Yeah. Good
chooses,
bones, strong bones.
yeah, hopefully he grows a lot or something. I don't know. But I don't know if they would say that's good parenting. They probably would say that I need to, change up his diet or make sure he eats
Say
this thing or
no,
that thing or
right?
whatever.
Yeah,
And it's like
exactly.
the kid he walks in the house, he goes straight to the refrigerator, grabs the food in it that he wants, and says, "I
Yeah.
want to eat this." And for the last 3 weeks, basically, he's just been picking his own dinner. He'll mix it up every now and then. He'll want a banana or something, or
Yeah,
if he
yeah,
sees a
yeah.
bunch of berries, he loves berries, blackberries, blueberries, whatever. He'll go in there and he'll grab those. And be like, this, all right, cool. There you go. Here's your dinner, Barrett. This is what you picked, and he eats it. I believe that's pretty sustainable at this point, and the food's healthy for him. So I'd say it's nurturing. So it adheres
Well,
with the
I like that
philosophy.
you,
Keep on
yeah.
trucking.
I like that you honor his decision, and it's not like, no, you can't have that because this doesn't seem like a well-rounded dinner or anything. I like that you honor his decision and you're like, hey, he goes straight to the refrigerator. He like beelines it for the refrigerator.
He every day he tells me what he wants to eat for dinner, and if he wanted,
Yeah.
and, every now and then he'll grab something, and it's like, you can't eat that, Barrett. You can't eat that. I didn't put it back. You can't eat that. That's because we'll have like Asian spice and stuff in there. He can't eat that hot stuff. Can't give it to him.
No.
Sorry, buddy. You can't eat that. No, you can't eat this. You can't eat that. There's definitely adult food in there that he just can't eat, and I put it back, and he'll freak out a little bit. But if we end up making him a dinner filled with stuff that we think is good in some sort of theoretical way, because the United States, this country that has advocated for giving their kids processed food with a whole bunch of toxins in it, has come up with some newfangled philosophy about what kids should eat. You just have to say, what is the track record of this society being correct on this? So if they're saying I should feed my kid this, there's no precedent that this makes any sense. There just isn't. You can look at other countries and see what their kids eat. And those other countries, their kids eat better food because it
Yeah.
just comes from the ground and
Mm-hmm.
not from a factory with a whole bunch of
Yep.
stuff. And then even the fruits and vegetables that we have in our country have so many more chemicals and stuff on it that even our version of healthy food isn't as healthy as the other places. And so when some
Right.
American in 5 years ago, 10 years ago comes up with some theory about what kids should eat and how we should interact with kids regarding food, you just say, if I just look at history really quickly, there's no track record that you have a clue. So I'm going to respectfully ignore that advice and just be pretty simple with it. Give them relatively healthy stuff to eat. And if they pick to eat something within the spectrum of the healthy food that we give them, he can eat it. And if at some point that creates a problem where he wants to eat stuff that's awful, hopefully that happens when he's able to have conversations and I can explain to him why this is a bad thing to do and why this other thing is a good thing to do. And that's why we're going to do this good thing. And there we go. And I can have that
Right.
conversation because I have a clear philosophy about what good is in
Mm-hmm.
regards to a thing
Mm-hmm.
that we actively make as opposed to a thing that some mythical entity that could be a company or a religion or whatever has made, and it's just my job to kind of like subjugate myself to the glory of this contraption or this whatever and just give it to my kid kind of, blindly. I'm not going to do that.
Hmm. One last thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you seen on Instagram or even TikTok, if you're scrolling, there's this like audio that comes up every once in a while because I have dogs.
Hmm.
And the video is like this person is going to the fridge, they open it, and then they pan the camera down to their dog. And the audio is like the cheese tax, the cheese tax. And your dog just like comes running because that happens to me all the time. Like
Oh,
I gave my dogs cheese once, and ever since then, every time I go to the fridge, they follow me because they think I'm bringing out cheese for them. That's what made me think when you said that your kid just beelines it straight to the refrigerator. He's like, he's got the cheese sacks.
I, I haven't seen that text, but that's exactly what happens. He had a slice of cheese. We went to Costco to make sure that I had
Mm,
all the stuff that I needed, so I didn't have to go on a grocery run where it's just the two of us because going grocery with a baby that makes everything more complicated. So let's just get
I
all the
know.
stuff we need
Yeah.
before she goes out of town. And we got one of them big Costco cheese value pack things.
Oh my God.
And so he saw it and was just curious about what it was. And I asked Andrea, like, I could give him a piece of cheese, right? I think that should be okay because as they get older, their palate and what they can eat evolves. And she said, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's fine. He can pretty much eat regular food now. We clearly avoid stuff that could be a choking hazard. And man, I gave him one slice of cheddar cheese. Game over. Done.
Nice.
Uh, one thing I will say, he has zero interest in Swiss cheese. Doesn't want to eat any of it. Yeah,
Wow.
Swiss cheese is disgusting to him. Doesn't want to eat it.
Okay.
I gave him a piece of Swiss cheese yesterday just to see how like strong this was because he hadn't had Swiss cheese in a week because he just turned it away. Gave him it. What happens? You give him like a whole slice. He'll pull off. Just pull it, and like a piece will come off. He pulled off a little bitty piece, put it in his mouth, and then rather quickly opened his mouth, reached in, pulled that piece of cheese out. I gave him a napkin, and he put it in the napkin, and he was done with it. Never looked at that piece of cheese again.
Wow.
So he hates Swiss cheese, but Colby
I
Jack,
know.
cheddar, loves it. Swiss cheese is
I
just
love
disgusting.
it.
He won't touch it. So
I love it. Just to see kind of like the evolution of their palates is interesting. Like you get to watch that, and that is so fascinating to me.
yeah,
Do
he's
you think that will ever change?
of course.
Or is that,
Yeah,
yeah?
of course. My palate's changed, and like, yeah, 100%. That's how life. The idea that it's just going to be static throughout life, and so much of what you think is good or bad, I think as a kid is psychological.
Mm,
Growing up,
yeah.
so many cartoons told me that vegetables were disgusting, and so I already had like the Simpsons and all these cartoons. Vegetables were bad and blah blah blah. You should eat
Oh, I know,
unhealthy
huh?
stuff, and so every time it came to eat a vegetable or something, in my brain I was always bracing for it to be disgusting, and then when it tasted okay, it was more of a surprise, and then it was kind of, am I gonna be the kid that eats the stuff that everyone thinks is gross? Huh. You know, that's one of the things, and so there's a very much a psychological aspect to what you want to think tastes good versus what actually does and doesn't taste good,
Oh, yeah,
and then
absolutely.
as you grow,
Absolutely.
your palate changes. There's stuff that I used to think was awful, and now
You
I
really
don't.
enjoy.
I'll eat it all day
Mm-hmm.
long, so it'll change. Nothing.
What's one of those for you?
A lot of it's vegetable related stuff. I can eat I can eat vegetables all day long, but at the same time, your body changes a little bit too. So I used to consume as much dairy as my kid does now. I can't do that anymore. I have to like
Same.
kind of balance it out. So that's not like a palate thing. I will say I've always hated bananas, and I still really hate bananas. I think they taste awful.
No Yeah.
just the worst. The taste is just so strong, and the texture is just such mush that it just doesn't make sense. It's just like the mushy, like like strong taste just permeates like every aspect of your mouth. It's just like, what is happening? And if you put it in a smoothie or
Wow.
something, the banana is everywhere. Like it just sticks out. I just can't do it. Uh, but my kid loves bananas. Loves bananas. That's another thing. He knows the word banana, but he says nana. So that's another.
Oh.
Before the refrigerator, he'd come home and walk straight to the bowl where the bananas were and just go, Nana. All right, cool. Here you go, open up and he eat a banana. But what he started doing is, since we give him food, we like give it to him, he will then want to give us food, and he'll get sad if we don't like eat it. And so long
Wow.
as
He
he doesn't,
reciprocates.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
long as he doesn't want to give us the food after he's put it in his mouth, we'll reciprocate and eat it. So I've eaten like banana morsels now, and I'm just like, God, this thing still tastes like crap. I don't like it, but but I'll do it for my kid. Uh, so it's not the same thing, but the psychological aspect of it is changes, where it's, you think it makes sense for me to reciprocate to my kid so that he has like a positive perception of sharing and being nice to other people. So I'll eat a little bit of this, even though I know I'm going to think it tastes like trash. Um,
And that's good parenting. Just kidding.
no, it's just something as simple as that. Um, but yeah, I think I didn't like Brussels sprouts as a kid. I can eat Brussels sprouts all day long. Those are really good. Um, this is actually a big one. I used to hate rice. I thought rice was just stupid. I yeah,
No way.
I thought it was just the dumbest food. I thought noodles were just a far superior type of food, and
Wow.
anything that had rice, you could just swap it out with noodles and it was just better. And
Wow.
so if my mom at home made a rice dish, I was always, can you just boil some noodles really quick so I can just put noodles with it, because I don't want to eat that rice. It's just no. And I think
Wow.
in hindsight, it was because a lot of the rice was just that simple box rice. There wasn't the big like array of different types of rice and the type of food that
Mm.
is
Mm-hmm.
actually essential to have rice as the component, where you don't swap it out with noodles. Um, like there's a whole other, once you kind of really explore Asian cuisine a bit more with like those variations of rice, you can see that you can't swap it with pasta. um, and then if you start looking into African cuisine and Caribbean cuisine a bit more, and kind of see how they mix in a whole bunch of different type of stuff with the rice, where it's like, okay, all right,
Herbs, yeah.
this is its own
Mm-hmm.
thing. But
Mm-hmm.
just getting some, Uncle Ben's box rice and adding it, it's just like, I ain't doing that. I'm not eating that stuff. But now I eat rice all the time. But yeah, as a kid, I thought rice was just dumb. I like noodles
I
are.
was gonna ask if it was because it's inconvenient too, because it's
It's.
so,
I think
you
noodles are
know?
just fun. I think eating
Yeah.
noodles are just so much more fun. You can just like, slurp it up, and you can twirl it on your foot. Like it can become like a bit of a game. Rice is just like a boring spoonful of stuff and just eat it. It's like, I don't want to do that. It's
Sometimes super bland. Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, what's
So I
happening?
could see that.
At
Yeah.
at some point, I learned that there was a thing called rice noodles, and I was like, shut up. They like they got rice and made it into noodle form.
Oh
This
yeah.
is incredible. Let me try that. And that I think that became like a gateway. I was like, I
I
want,
see.
like, the novelty of that just blew my mind. Like, hold up. This whole time I've been saying I want noodles instead of rice for this dish, and there's actually rice in noodle form.
It
uh
was a whole new world.
yeah. Oh, another thing is, I used to be very adamant about not having my food touch. I didn't like the
Mm.
idea of mixing the food together. I had a real
No
rigid, like,
way.
this thing is supposed to taste like this thing's supposed to taste like that, this is that. I'm here to eat the food.
Wow.
I'm not here to, like, be the culinary expert. I don't know. So I don't want touching. I don't want these things contaminating this thing. I just want to eat it in how each thing is supposed to taste individually. I was very adamant about that. And then
Hmm.
one day I came home, and I think I was like that all the way through high school. That wasn't like in elementary school. That was pretty rigid. And then one day I mixed it all up. I said, "All right, fine. Nothing cataclysmic happened. Let's let's see what happens." And so I started mixing stuff up a lot. But yeah, it all evolves, and just don't have a too rigid of a conception of, like, some arbitrary idea of what good is. It's
Right.
if
Yeah.
if the sustainable nurturing thing for me that makes me feel good is to have my food divided up, and it's not some outrageous burden on myself or my parents or whatever, then divide it up. And if at some point I change my mind and I want to mix it up. It's all good. That's
It
it.
is. Yeah.
And so yeah, these are really practical applications of doing good stuff, but I think that's how it works. You have to be able to do it at a pretty consistent micro level in relation to countless things you do on a given day, and then you become capable of imagining how you can do it at a macro level. Um, and so that's kind of how it works.
Well, awesome. I'm glad we got to talk about good parenting and
Yeah.
sustainable parenting. I don't have a phrase for us to reconstruct, which I know we just started that segment last time, but I don't have a phrase for us to kind of reconstruct into a better, more sustainable phrase. Do you?
Uh, so I will say one thing. I don't know about. I haven't thought of the answer, but I think a lot of the phrases that they teach regarding parenting have a weird focus on the alleged burden that it will have on the parents,
Mm,
which where it's a narrative of this kid's natural growth progression will probably become inconvenient for you in relation to your job. Therefore, we're going to describe it as if it's a negative thing when it's a positive thing. I think that's
mm-hmm.
really kind of strange. And even like how I describe my kid eating his food, I think they might call that baby led weaning, when where like the baby is taking the lead on eating the food, where you're not just force feeding your kid what you think is good. And
Yeah,
I think it's really weird how they phrase a lot of these stuffs where there isn't like a definitive leader here.
yeah,
Like, he's not making me do anything. He's not my boss. I'm making a logical decision that his action, which is quite assertive in this regard, is a thing that I am condoning and nurturing and encouraging. So he's not leading me. We're collaborating in the whole thing. And I think that's all really weird, especially when you think of how it implies like what the power dynamics people like expect, where you as a parent are supposed to be some sort of like benevolent authoritarian, I guess, where you're just making,
that is what it is.
and it's like,
Well, what
no.
society expects you to be, yeah.
And so the moments when you aren't some sort of benevolent, all powerful authoritarian and you let your kid make some decision, now we have to articulate it as if the kid is now the authoritarian or he's your boss.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, he's not my boss. He's a baby. I'm clearly letting him do this, but it's a balance. We're
Yeah.
collaborating. Like he has a
Exactly.
desire to grow and be the best version of himself because he doesn't know how to do anything besides that. And I have a clear agenda that I want that to happen too. So it's a clear collaboration. It doesn't really matter
Yeah,
who has more power in this scenario. It's not a
right.
power play. We have
Mm.
a collaborative vision of him being the best he can be. So let's collaborate.
I like that. So instead of kind of like a parent power play, which isn't like a real phrase that people use all the time, but like let's collaborate instead, like there shouldn't be like a power hierarchy, where you as a parent, you're the authoritarian.
And it's just like, how petty is that? Like, it's a baby.
Yeah.
It's a baby. What's the point of saying that you're real powerful or you're the boss? Like, it's a kid. He
Right.
literally is dependent on us to do almost everything. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Imagining that you are the powerful one, like I don't know how that is boastful or should make you feel anything. It's like saying water's wet. Yeah, I can definitely do more stuff than the baby. Who cares? That's not the point of this. That's not the reason why you have a kid, is so that you can feel powerful over an entity
Oh,
that's
I know.
dependent on you and largely helpless.
And
What is
will
the
be for like several years.
yeah? What is the
Yeah.
point of that? I don't get it.
No, for real. Yeah.
So I don't know. I haven't come up with a phrase to reconstruct it, but I definitely don't like how a lot of stuff is articulated with these weird like power dynamics implied with a strange emphasis where the emphasis is on the parents being really efficient with regards to their job in relation to how they interact with their kid. So if their kid is going through a phase where their sleep is fluctuating and that will result in the parents having less sleep, which could mean that they're more tired at their work and maybe less productive in relation to an entity that doesn't exist to care about whether they're a good parent or not, we then articulate that kid going through a natural growth cycle as something that's problematic. And it's like, no, that clearly isn't problematic. He's doing the thing he's supposed to do, or he, she, they doing the
Exactly.
thing they're supposed to do to grow. Sounds like it's pretty awesome. And if we live in a society that says that that's a problem, then clearly the problem resides with the society, not with this child
Not with the
who's
kid.
just
Yeah.
trying to grow and be a person. It's crazy.
It is. We'll think of a way to reconstruct
Yeah.
that.
We'll circle back next week.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on socials at SCL_community and subscribe to The Word, which is our Substack newsletter. We also want to hear from you about what you want us to talk about next, so make sure to leave a comment letting us know your thoughts and where you see ethnocide in the world, and maybe also for this week, how you're cultivating sustainable family relationships. Until next time, I'm Luna.
And I'm Barrett.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.